When was the last time someone actually explained your pelvic floor to you? If you're like most women, the answer is probably never. Yet, your pelvic floor is one of the most important parts of your body, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a pelvic floor physical therapist, it is true. Your pelvic floor plays such an important role in so many different functions, such as supporting your pelvic organs or improving and controlling bladder and bowel function. It plays a role in sexual function, and it plays a massive role if you are pregnant or postpartum, which is why today I am giving you your pelvic floor 101 class, going over anatomy and functions of your pelvic floor, the health class you wish you had. This is the female pelvis, and everything you see in pink are the muscles of your pelvic floor. So your pelvic floor is actually a group of muscles that sit at the base of your pelvis like a bowl. So it extends from the pubic symphysis joint in front to the tailbone in the back, and then to the sits bones on either side. It sits almost like a hammock or a sling at the bottom of your pelvis. The pelvic floor is made up of 3 distinct layers of muscles. I'm not going to get into each distinct muscle, but it is important to know that there are multiple layers of your pelvic floor because each layer can play a different role in any sort of pelvic floor dysfunction that you might be experiencing. Additionally, your pelvic floor does not work just in isolation. Think of a soda can. The top of the soda can is your diaphragm. The bottom of the soda can is your pelvis and your pelvic floor. The front and the sides of your soda can are made up of your abdominals, your obliques, your rectus abdominis, all of those muscles you've heard of. And the back of your soda can is made up of your lower back muscles. Together with your pelvic floor, all of these muscles work to maintain proper pressure within your abdominal cavity. Now let's go over the basic functions of your pelvic floor, the 5 S's: support, stability, sphincteric control, aka bladder and bowel control, sexual health, and sump pump. The first is support. Your pelvic floor truly holds up your pelvic organs as if they were sitting within this bowl. The innermost layer, which is the 3rd layer of your pelvic floor, plays the most vital role in supporting these pelvic organs. One of those vital pelvic organs is your uterus and cervix. So as you can imagine, if you are pregnant or if you've ever been pregnant, the growing baby and uterus sit right on your pelvic floor, which can place a lot of pressure onto those muscles. The second S is stability. This is referring back to that soda can where your pelvic floor acts as the base of your inner core system, and together it works with your abdominals, diaphragm, and lower back muscle to provide stability to your spine during everyday movement and especially while you are lifting heavy loads, whether that be strength training or just lifting your child. The third S is sphincter control. The pelvic floor muscles wrap around these openings, urethra and rectum, to control the flow of urine or stool. For instance, if you have really tight pelvic floor muscles around your urethra, it's going to make it harder for you to use the bathroom and allow for the flow of urine. Your pelvic floor muscles need to relax in order to open those sphincters and allow urine and stool to flow. You might not realize it, but one of the largest issues that I see with patients that relates to the pelvic floor is constipation. If you have tight pelvic floor muscles around your rectum, it is going to prevent the passage of stool. So a lot of women who have really tight pelvic floors actually are dealing with constipation and they don't even realize that their pelvic floor is playing a role. The fourth S is sexual function. So just like your pelvic floor muscles wrap around your urethra and your rectum, they also wrap around that vaginal opening and contribute to things like arousal and comfort during sexual intercourse. You can imagine if you have a tight pelvic floor, it is going to close off this vaginal opening, potentially making it more painful while you're having intercourse. This is something that a lot of women deal with, especially early postpartum. On the flip side, if you have a pelvic floor that is really weak, it actually can decrease the intensity of your orgasm. So if you're feeling like your orgasms are weak or maybe non-existent, it might be because your pelvic floor muscles just aren't strong enough to provide that contraction. And number 5, sump pump. Your pelvic floor muscles actually act as a sump pump when they contract and relax to return blood and lymph back to your heart. You can see here there are a lot of nerves and blood vessels and lymphatic vessels that are involved in your pelvic floor. So if your pelvic floor can get tight in one area, it might actually restrict the ability of these vessels to return blood and lymph back to your heart. If you've ever experienced increased swelling or maybe enlarged blood vessels during pregnancy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Vulvar varicosities are basically a swelling of the vein in your pelvic region during pregnancy. So think of those spider veins that you can get on your legs. You can get those along your vulva because the blood flow is not returning back to your heart. So you're getting a lot of swelling in this vulvar region that can be really uncomfortable during pregnancy. So we've gone over the basic anatomy of the pelvic floor and the 5 S's that go over the functions of the pelvic floor. But what exactly can go wrong with the pelvic floor that leads to dysfunction? The first is potentially pelvic floor tightness. And we briefly touched on some of the issues that can come up with having pelvic floor tightness, such as difficulty having intercourse or constipation, or maybe having a hard time starting the stream of urine because your pelvic floor muscles are so tight. You can also just get generalized pelvic, hip, and low back pain from having tight muscles. And if you are pregnant and delivering soon, if you have tight pelvic floor muscles, it can actually limit the ability to get your baby through that birth canal because your pelvic floor muscles need to relax, lengthen, and get out of the way in order to birth your baby through the birth canal. So really tight pelvic floor muscles can make it your labor experience more difficult. Another issue with the pelvic floor, other than tightness, is weakness. And a lot of women will experience pelvic floor weakness in the form of leakage of urine. I cannot tell you the number of times I've worked with women who are leaking while running or coughing or sneezing. And not all the time, but often this can be due to weakness of the pelvic floor muscles, where they're truly just not strong enough to close off those sphincters to prevent the flow of urine against a stressful event such as running or coughing or sneezing. And then the third type of issue that can happen with the pelvic floor is an uncoordinated pelvic floor. So it's not too tight, it's not too weak, but the order of contraction of your pelvic floor is not coordinated well with the rest of your deep core system. For instance, if you need to quickly contract your pelvic floor right before you cough or sneeze, but you're unable to do so really quickly, that can lead to that leakage. So your pelvic floor is able to contract during a cough or a sneeze, but it's not doing it quickly enough. So it's not necessarily the pure tightness or weakness that's causing the leakage, but the lack of muscle coordination. So if you're wondering what to do with all this information and how to improve your pelvic health, I typically like to have women start with these 3 things. The first, just become aware of your pelvic floor, which if you're already watching this video, you're doing a great job of just learning what your pelvic floor is. But learning where the holes of your pelvic floor are, that urethra, vaginal opening, and rectal opening, where those are, what the functions of the muscles are doing can help you improve your pelvic floor just by knowing it exists. The second thing is to connect your pelvic floor with your breath. Remember that soda can analogy, your diaphragm, which is your breathing muscle, is linked to your pelvic floor. And so learning how to inhale and relax your pelvic floor and then exhale and contract your pelvic floor is a great step to improving your overall function. And then the third thing is to strengthen it with the rest of your body. Your pelvic floor does not work in isolation, so just doing Kegels is not necessarily going to be the answer. But improving pelvic floor function while strengthening your full body is going to give you the best results. So remember, your pelvic floor is so much more than Kegels. It is the foundational strength for your entire body, especially if you are pregnant or going through your early postpartum recovery period. If you are pregnant and looking for pelvic floor integrated workouts to go throughout your entire pregnancy, click the link below to join my Moving Through Pregnancy program, which is a 37-week pregnancy-friendly strength training program that integrates your pelvic floor function into every single workout. And if you are postpartum and just had your baby, you can also join my Moving Through Early Postpartum program, which basically acts as your pelvic floor rehab program through 12 weeks to restore your pelvic floor and core function. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and continue following along for more pelvic floor, postpartum, and pregnancy education.